The soft patter of rain tapped against the windows of Blue Pine Diner, like the tiny, impatient fingers of a child waiting to be heard. Droplets slid down the glass in slow, winding trails, like memories stirring from a long slumber. Inside, the air was warm and carried the comforting scent of freshly brewed coffee, mixed with a trace of maple syrup lingering on an unclean corner table. Maya Thompson stood behind the counter, her apron a little frayed at the hem. She moved in slow, steady circles, wiping down a counter worn smooth by years of use. But she wasn't cleaning anymore. Her movements had taken on a rhythm of their own, something to anchor herself with, something to keep her from drifting into thoughts too deep and too hard to face. She had just turned 28, but in moments like this, her eyes carried a quiet weariness, soft and aged beyond her years, the kind of weariness that comes not from fatigue, but from loss and learning to live with it. Every Thursday afternoon held the same strange hush, after the chaos of the lunch rush and before the evening crowd rolled in, but it wasn't peace. It was the kind of silence that echoed inside your chest, the kind that left too much space for thoughts you didn't want to name. "You're gonna scrub a hole through that counter, Maya," came Jimmy's voice from the kitchen, half teasing, half fond, as only someone who's watched your routines week after week can be. Maya smiled softly and tossed the rag into the sanitizer bucket. "Better than standing around letting my thoughts run wild," she replied with a light laugh. But beneath her voice there was something unsaid, a weight in her words that hovered just below the surface. Blue Pine wasn't just a job to Maya, it was her lifeline, a quiet refuge she'd clung to after her father's accident forced her back to the sleepy outskirts of Asheville 3 years ago. The cracked red vinyl booths had soaked up years of conversations, first dates, breakups, family reunions, and long goodbyes. The mismatched dishes on the walls looked like they'd been collected from flea markets and garage sales, but together they formed a kind of unpolished art, imperfect but full of character. Kind of like life. The diner had been around for over 40 years, founded by a couple named Hank and Marlene Franklin, people who believed that good food and genuine kindness could heal more than hunger. Locals still told stories about Hank quietly paying for meals when someone was struggling, and how Marlene stayed after hours to help kids with their homework in the corner booth. Maya had never met them, but somehow their presence lingered in the way the light filtered through the foggy glass, in the smell of cookies Jimmy sometimes baked just for fun. It all whispered of a legacy that had never truly left. The current owner, Mrs. Henderson, was a quiet older woman who rarely came in, preferring to let the staff manage things their own way. Maya saw it as a kind of trust, rare, generous, a little fragile. Her gaze drifted toward Booth 9, a quiet spot tucked into the corner by the window. A small, weathered sign sat permanently on the table, reserved from 2 to 4 p.m. It had been there as long as Maya had worked here. She'd asked about it twice. Both times she was met with vague answers from Derek, the assistant manager. Administrative meetings, he'd said, or just keeping it open in case it's needed. But in 3 years no one had ever sat there during those hours. The booth remained untouched, like it was waiting for someone who never came. Then the bell above the door chimed, snapping her out of thought. Maya looked up, expecting old Mr. Peterson with his wooden cane and black coffee. But it wasn't him. The boy stood just inside the doorway, hesitant, unmoving. He couldn't have been more than 9, small enough that his navy blue coat hung awkwardly on his frame. His dark hair was soaked, rainwater dripping slowly down his forehead, but it wasn't his appearance that made Maya's heart skip. It was the way he stood utterly still, as if listening to something no one else could hear, his head tilted slightly to the side, the way someone might if they were tuning in to the soft whisper of the wind. In his right hand, he held a neatly folded white cane. The boy was blind. Maya watched as he took a step forward, then another, each one careful and deliberate. His left hand brushed along the wall, searching the space in front of him like a soldier walking across a minefield. Quietly brave and astonishingly composed. No one spoke. The diner seemed to hold its breath. And Maya, watching him move through the space that had always felt so familiar, felt something shift in her. Not pity. Something deeper. Something reverent. As if the boy wasn't just here by chance, but had been called. As if the booth had been waiting for him all along. She wanted to help. Her body even leaned slightly toward him, but something kept her rooted. Maybe it was the quiet confidence in the way he walked. Maybe she just didn't want to disturb the grace of his presence. She watched, stunned, as the boy made his way straight to booth 9, as if he'd been there 1,000 times. He slid into the seat across from the window and placed his cane beside him with the care of someone putting down a trusted companion. Then he did something that made Maya's chest tighten. He reached out, found the water glass that always sat in the center of the table, and traced his finger around the rim, slowly, purposefully, like he was tuning into a memory or making music only he could hear. Maya looked around. Jimmy was still in the kitchen. Derek was hunched over invoices at the back. The only other customer was a man in his 30s, seated 2 booths behind the boy, quietly writing in a brown leather notebook. None of them seemed to notice the boy at all. She crossed the floor and approached Derek, her voice low. "Hey, do you know anything about the kids sitting in booth 9? Derek looked up from his paperwork, glanced toward the corner, and shrugged with mild annoyance. "What kid?" "The little boy. He's blind. He came in alone and sat in the reserved booth." Derek's face tightened with frustration. "Great. Someone probably thought we're running a free babysitting service again. His parents will show up eventually." Maya kept her voice even. "He's sitting there alone, Derek. Don't you think we should check?" "Maya," Derek cut in, setting his pen down with a sigh. The look he gave her was one she'd seen many times. It said, "You care too much." "He's fine. Probably just waiting for someone. If there's a real issue, someone will ask for help. We're not social services." And there it was, the very thing that always rubbed Maya the wrong way. Derek wasn't a bad person, but he had this maddening ability to reduce people into boxes, to look past what they needed and focus only on what needed managing. Maya turned her gaze back to the boy, still seated, still slowly circling the rim of the glass. There was a loneliness in that gesture that pulled at something deep inside her. She had always been drawn to people others overlooked. Maybe it was because of how she was raised, by a grandmother who believed the quietest people often had the most extraordinary stories. Outside, the rain began to fall harder. The boy tilted his head toward the sound, and for the first time, Maya saw his profile fully. He had a face that looked like it belonged in a Norman Rockwell painting, round cheeks, a small nose, and an expression of patient acceptance that didn't belong on someone his age. And just like that, Maya made a decision. She grabbed a clean glass from behind the counter, filled it with ice water, added a lemon slice, the way she always did for kids, and walked straight toward booth 9. A familiar frustration began to rise in Maya's chest. She had always been unsettled by the way Derek treated people, as if they were tasks to be handled rather than souls to be understood. Her eyes drifted back to booth 9. Eli was still there, gently tracing the rim of the glass in a quiet, almost meditative motion, like someone lost in prayer. Since childhood, Maya had always felt drawn to those who lived quietly on the edges, the ones who carried entire universes inside but rarely let them be seen. Maybe it was because she was raised by a grandmother who used to say, "The quietest people often have the most to say, if you know how to listen." Outside, the rain began to fall harder, pounding against the window panes like it was urging something to be said, something to be seen, The boy tilted his head toward the sound, and for the first time, Maya saw his face clearly under the soft glow of the diner lights. His features were round and delicate, with a small nose and a peaceful expression far too calm for a child. He looked like someone who had long since made peace with waiting. That was all Maya needed. She walked back behind the counter, grabbed a clean glass, filled it with cold water, and added a fresh slice of lemon. The little gesture she always saved for the kids she liked most. Her heart quickened as she carried it toward booth 9. "Hi there," Maya said softly, careful not to startle him. "I'm Maya. I work here at the diner." The boy's face lit up instantly, like a lamp turned on in a dark room. "Hi, Miss Maya. I'm Eli." His voice was clear, polite, with a hint of shyness that made Maya's heart melt. She placed the water in front of him and slid into the seat across the table. "Are you waiting for someone, Eli?" He nodded. "Yes, ma'am. My uncle said he'd pick me up at 4. He had to run an errand." Maya glanced at the clock on the wall. It was only 2:15. "So you'll be here by yourself until then?" "Yes, but I like it here," Eli said sweetly. "It smells like pancakes and coffee, and something else, something warm." "That's probably Jimmy's famous apple pie," Maya smiled. "He bakes it fresh every morning. It smells like happiness." "I like that smell," Eli said quietly. "It makes me feel safe." Maya studied his small face. His eyes didn't focus, but somehow it felt like he could see everything. There was something deeply special about him, something that made her want to just sit and listen for hours. "Well then, Eli," Maya said, leaning back in her seat, "if you don't mind, would you let me keep you company for a bit? I'm on my break, and I hate eating alone." Eli's grin was all the answer she needed. And so, Maya sat at booth 9, listening as Eli told her about his day, a day that seemed ordinary but somehow became magical in the telling. What she didn't know then was that this small, simple gesture would change the course of her life forever. 2 booths away, the man with the leather notebook was still writing, but now he wasn't just scribbling casually. He was focused, documenting every word, every smile, every moment exchanged at the far end of the diner, as if something monumental was unfolding right before his eyes. Maya glanced at Eli, who had his hands folded neatly on the table. The rain shimmered through the window beside them, casting soft reflections across the boy's face. The stillness of the moment carried a strange weight, a sense that something wasn't quite right. "Really," she said gently, "can I ask you something? Did your uncle talk to anyone here? Did he call the diner or tell anyone you'd be here waiting?" Eli tilted his head thoughtfully. "He just said to sit in the corner booth. He said someone would know I was supposed to be here." Maya's instincts stirred. Protective, maternal. Something about that answer didn't sit well with her. She excused herself and walked quickly back to the counter, where Derek was scrolling on his phone. "Derek?" she asked, trying to keep calm. "Did anyone call ahead about a child being dropped off today?" Derek looked up, mildly irritated. "Maya, I already told you." "I don't know anything about that. Maybe someone said something to the morning shift." "Who is on the morning shift?" "Sandra and Mike. They left at 2. Jesus, why not check with them?" Derek shrugged. "The kid said someone's picking him up at 4, so someone probably will. You're always making a big deal out of nothing." But Maya wasn't about to let it go. She turned on her heel and headed to the kitchen. "Jimmy, has anyone mentioned anything about a boy being dropped off here today?" Jimmy, broad-shouldered and in his 50s, a man who'd worked at Blue Pine for over a decade, looked up from the stovetop, puzzled. "First I've heard of it, sweetheart. Why, what's going on?" "There's a blind boy sitting at booth 9. He says his uncle will be here at 4, but but no one here seems to know anything about it. Jimmy stepped around the kitchen window and peered into the dining area. His eyes softened instantly. Poor kid. He looks thin, too. Bet he's starving. Maya froze. She hadn't seen Eli eat or drink a thing since he arrived. Her stomach tightened with worry. A new decision settled in her chest, quiet but firm, one she knew Derek would roll his eyes at if he found out. But this time, Maya didn't care. She turned, walked straight back to booth 9, and slid into the seat across from Eli. "Hey, sweetheart," she said gently, her voice warm as a blanket on a rainy day. "When was the last time you ate, Eli?" Maya asked, her voice as gentle as the rain tapping against the awning outside. Eli's cheeks flushed a little, and he hesitated. "This morning. Uncle Noah was in a hurry, so we only had toast." "Well, that's no good at all," Maya said, feigning a serious tone, though her eyes remained warm. "It's way past lunchtime now, and I'm absolutely starving. Would you mind if I ate with you? I really hate eating alone." Eli's face lit up like summer sunshine breaking through thick clouds. "Really? You want to eat with me?" "Of course." "Let's share one of Jimmy's special sandwiches. He makes the best ones in all of North Carolina. And truth be told, I ordered too much. No way I can finish it all by myself." It was a little white lie, but Maya didn't care. She hurried to the kitchen, placing an order for a sandwich and fries, paying for it out of her own pocket. When she returned, Eli was sitting just as she'd left him, hands folded neatly on the table, his expression patient, far older than his years. "Here we go," Maya said, setting the plate down between them. "Half for you, half for me. Fair deal?" Eli carefully picked up his half of the sandwich. Maya noticed the small backpack beside him, worn but clean. "What do you have in your backpack, if you don't mind me asking?" she said, curious. "Mostly books," Eli replied mid-bite. "I love reading stories." Maya's eyes lit up. "What kind of stories?" "All kinds. But right now I'm reading one about a dog named Hank. He's a cow dog who lives on a ranch in Texas and keeps getting into funny trouble." Eli's genuine enthusiasm tugged at something deep inside Maya. "Would you like me to read some of it to you while we eat?" His face broke into a bright smile, like the sun peeking out after a long storm. "Would you really?" "Absolutely. I love reading aloud." Eli carefully unzipped his backpack and pulled out a well-worn paperback, Hank the Cow Dog. Maya flipped to the page marked with a green bookmark and began reading about Hank's latest adventure with his bumbling sidekick, Drover. But Maya didn't just read. She brought the story to life. She gave each character a different voice, added emotion, and described everything Eli couldn't see. The golden light streaming through the gray clouds outside, the soft steam rising from nearby coffee cups, the faint hum of Jimmy quietly singing an old country tune in the kitchen, and the mismatched plates on the wall whispering stories of meals gone by. "This diner feels like it has a heartbeat," Maya murmured between paragraphs. "I feel it too," Eli said softly. "It's like the whole building is smiling." Maya glanced over her shoulder. The man 2 booths away was still writing in his leather notebook, but now he was clearly watching them. Something about the intensity of his attention gave her pause, but she brushed it off. She kept reading for nearly an hour. From time to time, they'd both burst into laughter at Hank's silly antics. Maya described the scenes with such vivid detail, Eli seemed to see them with his heart. He finished the sandwich and most of the fries, and the way his appetite returned made Maya feel warm in a way she couldn't explain. But as the clock ticked past 3:30, a quiet hollowness began to settle in Maya's chest. Time was slipping away too fast. Along with the joy, a small twinge of worry began to stir. "Really?" she said gently. "Can you tell me about your Uncle Noah?" Eli's face turned thoughtful. "He's really nice, but lately he's been kind of sad. He says he has a lot to think about." Stuff about work, about family, grown-up things. Maya nodded, but unease crept in. Something wasn't adding up. The always reserved table, the mysterious uncle, the man watching them. It all felt like puzzle pieces waiting to click into place. And Maya had no idea that she, the kind waitress on a rainy afternoon, was about to become the most important piece of all. At the booth behind them, the man set down his pen and rubbed his tired eyes. His name was Noah Franklin. He had been sitting there for over an hour, documenting every glance, every word, every act of kindness Maya showed his nephew, as if the future depended on it. The worn leather notebook in front of him was now filled with 3 pages of notes, neater and more deliberate than any he'd written in months. For the past 3 months, Noah had conducted this test many times, and every time he had left disappointed. Sandra, the morning waitress, had given Eli a polite smile but kept her distance. Mike, the assistant cook, had delivered water and then ignored the boy completely. Derek had even asked Eli to move, saying reserved booths weren't for unattended kids. Noah had driven Eli home those days with a heavy heart, wondering if he'd ever find someone who could meet the strange, heartfelt condition left in a very unusual will. But today, there was Maya. She didn't just read a book. She opened a whole world to Eli. A world he couldn't see with his eyes but felt with every fiber of his heart. And Noah knew, without question, that if his Uncle Hank had still been alive, he would have loved Maya from the very first moment. Noah thought back to the reading of the will 6 months earlier. While others had expected money, he'd inherited something else entirely. 51% ownership of the Blue Pine Diner. But only if he personally witnessed a staff member treat Eli with genuine compassion, without obligation or pity. Only then would he have full authority to take over. If not, the ownership would revert to a charitable foundation, and the diner would likely be sold to a restaurant chain. Uncle Hank always believed a person's true character was revealed in how they treated those who could offer nothing in return. And to Hank, Eli wasn't just a blind, orphaned boy. He was part of his legacy, a soul meant to be loved, not managed. Now, watching Eli giggle, as Maya read the part where Hank gets chased by a chicken, Noah felt something stir in his chest. Hope. Maya had no idea she was being observed. She didn't know about the will, but the way she cared for Eli, listened to him, helped him without show, laughed with him, cleaned up after him without complaint. It all said one thing. She did it not because someone was watching, but because it was the right thing to do. Noah glanced at the clock. Almost 4. It was time to stop being the silent observer. But before he stood up, he wanted to see how Maya would handle their goodbye. Would she keep that same warmth to the very end, or would she see it as just another good deed during her shift? Something to check off and move on from. He gently closed the notebook, his hand resting on the worn cover, his eyes still watching. Just then, Maya's eyes met his. She looked at him with polite curiosity, probably wondering why a stranger had been sitting alone all afternoon. Noah offered a slight nod and looked back at the page, though his heart was racing. For the first time since Uncle Hank's death, Noah felt he'd found exactly what he'd been searching for: hope. Over the next 3 weeks, Maya found herself looking forward to Thursday afternoons the way a child looks forward to their birthday. Eli had become a regular fixture at Booth 9, arriving promptly at 2:15 and leaving at exactly 4, always picked up by his Uncle Noah, a quiet, reserved man who kept to himself. What had started as a single kind gesture became something Maya cherished deeply. She now planned her Thursday breaks around Eli, like a ritual wrapped in warmth. Their conversations brought laughter and, more importantly, helped water the parts of Maya's soul that had been dry for too long. "Miss Mim!" Eli shouted with joy on their third meeting, his face lighting up the moment he heard her footsteps. Maya laughed as she slid into her usual seat across from him. "Since when am I, Miss Mim?" Eli's cheeks flushed pink. "It's easier than Miss Maya, and it sounds cooler, like you're a superhero or something." Maya's heart melted. "So what's my superpower then?" she asked with a soft smile. "Making people feel important," Ellie replied, without a moment's hesitation. Maya had to turn away for a second to keep herself from tearing up. That day she brought in a box of chocolate chip cookies, baked from her mother's old family recipe. They were still warm, filled with the rich aroma of brown butter and a hint of cinnamon. When Eli took his first bite, his eyes lit up with joy, making Maya laugh with pure happiness. "These are the best cookies I've ever had," Eli said solemnly, as if delivering a verdict before the Supreme Court. "I'll tell my mom. She's going to be thrilled," Maya replied. But she didn't just bring food, she brought a whole world. The following week, Maya visited the local library and spoke with Ms. Chin, the children's librarian, to learn more about books for visually impaired kids. After 3 sleepless nights and countless hours on YouTube, she created a custom version of Charlotte's Web. Each illustration textured with raised paint so Eli could feel them with his hands. "Something for you today," Maya said, placing the book gently on the table. "You can feel Charlotte's Web here, and this is Wilbur the pig." Eli ran his fingers across the page. Slowly, carefully, he traced each line. His eyes closed, and he whispered, "I can see it. I can really see it in my head." For the next hour, Maya read while Eli saw through touch. He imagined every detail: the barn, the animals, the shimmering silk threads Charlotte spun in the dark. Maya watched him like she was witnessing a fragile new shoot breaking through the cold ground of winter. The following Thursday, she brought special raised line paper and crayons designed for visually impaired children. "You can pick any color you want. The lines will guide your hand." Eli chose blue and began coloring a butterfly, tongue slightly out in concentration, his expression intensely focused. "This feels like magic, Miss Mim." Maya smiled, her gaze tender. He wasn't just coloring. He was slowly rebuilding his confidence, one stroke at a time. At booth 7, Noah kept writing. But now the words in his notebook weren't just objective observations. They had become confessions of awe, of gratitude, of a man witnessing the purest form of goodness he'd ever known. No one knew Maya was being watched, but every act of kindness, bringing cookies, preparing books, creating art opportunities, was authentic and unforced. She wasn't trying to earn points. She simply did what felt right in her heart. On the 5th Thursday, Eli was unusually quiet. He picked at his sandwich instead of eating like he normally did. "What's wrong, sweetheart?" Maya asked softly. Eli mumbled, "Some kids at school said I'm weird because I can't see. They said I'm strange." Maya was silent for a moment, then placed her hand on the table, her voice steady and serious. "Did you know some of the most amazing people in history were different, just like you? That's what made them special." Then she told Eli about Helen Keller, Ray Charles, Stevie Wonder, people who overcame the odds and changed the world. But it wasn't those names that made Eli sit up straighter. It was the way Maya spoke to him. With respect, with belief, and with genuine love. When they finished, Eli looked up and smiled. His shoulders lifted. "Thank you, Miss M. You always know how to make things better." Noah closed his notebook and smiled for the first time in months. The test was over, and he knew. If Hank were still alive, he'd say, "That's the one we've been looking for." On Monday, Maya walked into Blue Pine expecting a regular workday, but something felt off. Derek was gathering all the staff in the back. His face was unusually serious. "Phones down. Everyone, emergency meeting," he announced, his tone cold enough to send a chill through Maya. In all her 3 years working here, she had never seen Derek like this. The morning staff was already present. Customers were gently directed toward the front of the diner. Someone had dimmed the lights in the back, like the room was preparing for something important. "What's going on?" Maya whispered to Sandra, who only shrugged, visibly nervous. A few minutes later, a woman in a tailored suit entered, followed by a tall, well-dressed man, and Maya recognized him immediately. She leaned toward Jimmy and whispered, "That's the guy, the one who always sat at booth 7, writing all afternoon." Jimmy nodded. "Yeah, that's him. Been coming every week for months now." The woman stepped forward. "Good morning, everyone. I'm Patricia Wells from Franklin Management Group. I'm here today to introduce someone very important." She turned toward the man beside her. "This is Noah Franklin, and he has something very special to share with all of you." The name Franklin made Maya's breath catch in her throat. Franklin, as in the family who had built Blue Pine. Noah stepped forward, clearly nervous but composed. His hands trembled slightly as his eyes scanned the room. "Thank you all for being here," he began, his voice deep but kind. "I know this is unexpected, but let me start by explaining who I am and why I'm standing here today." He paused, brushing a hand through his hair like he was trying to find the right words. 6 months ago, my uncle, Hank Franklin, passed away. Some of you may remember him. Jimmy nodded. "I do. Mr. Hank gave me my first job here when I was just 18. Noah smiled. "I'm sure he remembered you too, Jimmy." "My uncle never forgot anyone who worked hard and treated others with kindness." His face turned solemn. "When my uncle passed, he left me 51% ownership of Blue Pine, but with one very specific condition." The room went still. Maya's heart pounded. Noah continued, "My uncle believed that the true character of a business is revealed in how its people treat those who can offer them nothing in return. He wanted to make sure that whoever ran Blue Pine wasn't just good at business, but also good at heart." Noah opened his coat and pulled out the worn leather notebook, the very one Maya had seen him writing in all those afternoons. "And over the past 3 months, he said, now looking directly at Maya, I've been conducting a test. My nephew Eli has been visiting this diner every Thursday afternoon for the past 3 months, sitting at booth 9. He paused. "Relaxed, Reba. Reba is 8 years old, and he's blind." Maya's heart slammed against her chest. She had suspected something, but hearing it confirmed from Noah's lips struck her with a rush of emotions: shock, awe, and something deeper, harder to name. Most of the staff acknowledged Eli politely. Noah went on, his eyes scanning the room, and then returned to their duties. "That's not a criticism. It's human. Everyone's busy, and a quiet child isn't anyone's job." He turned fully now to face Maya. But one person was different. Every head in the room turned to her. Maya's cheeks flushed red. She wanted to disappear, but more than that, something rose within her, something pure and unspeakably moving. Homeperson sat with Eli, shared her meals with him, read to him, created art projects for him, and, most importantly, treated him as if he was the most valuable person in the room. Noah took a step toward her and pulled a thick envelope from his coat pocket. "Maya Thompson," he said, his voice so sincere that she had to blink back tears. "You didn't just pass my uncle's test. You redefined it. 3 weeks ago, I made some calls. I reached out to the community college about special education programs, spoke with the state about funding for learning initiatives for children with unique needs, and researched everything it would take to expand Blue Pine's role in the community." Maya's hands trembled as she accepted the envelope. This is an official offer. You will lead the Blue Pine Community Learning Center, focused on education programs for children with special needs. The position comes with double your current salary and a 10% share of the profits." Gasps and murmurs filled the room. But Maya didn't hear any of it. She opened the envelope, eyes locked on the figure printed on the paper. Her lips moved but made no sound. "Well, me?" she whispered, tears spilling before she could hold them back. "Because you saw Eli the way Uncle Hank and Aunt Marlene always hoped someone would. Not as a case, not as someone to pity, but as a remarkable child, worthy of love, of being heard, of being believed in." Maya glanced around the room, the place where she was once just a waitress, and now her life's dream was taking form before her eyes. A few looks of surprise, even envy, passed through the room, but no one could deny it. A miracle had just unfolded. Noah smiled. "There's one more thing. For the past week, Eli's been asking me over and over, is Miss M going to be there on Thursday? And today, I'm finally able to tell him, yes, she's not going anywhere." For the first time since the meeting began, Maya laughed through her tears. "Well then, I better start planning some new activities for my little guy." The room erupted in applause. But for Maya, in that moment, all she could think about was the boy who had walked into her life like a quiet little miracle. 6 months later, Maya stood at the doorway of what used to be Blue Pine's old supply room. Now it was something entirely different. Something magical. Soft golden light from the ceiling bathed a colorful array of beanbag chairs, shelves filled with both regular and tactile books, and an art corner equipped with tools designed for children of all abilities. "Miss M, are you reading to us today?" called out a small voice. Sarah, a bright 7-year-old with Down syndrome, brought in every Saturday morning by her grandmother. "Of course," Maya smiled, settling into the reading chair that Noah had designed himself. "What are we reading today?" A chorus of voices chimed in, but Eli stood out like sunshine breaking through clouds. "Miss M, let's read the new Hank the Cowdog, the mystery one." Maya looked at her little friend, who now joined her on both Thursdays and Saturdays, and smiled warmly. "Excellent choice. But first, let's do our opening chant." The children joined hands in a circle. Some could see, some could not. Some had disabilities, some did not. But together, they recited the motto Maya had written. "Every story matters, every voice counts, and every heart is welcome here." Maya glanced through the window connecting the reading room to the main kitchen. Noah was training 2 new staff members, and she could see how carefully he was choosing his words, emphasizing patience and kindness. Blue Pine was no longer just a diner. It had become a true community hub, a place where both meals and hearts were nourished. At first, Maya had worried about jealousy, but Noah had wisely brought every staff member into the process. Each person was heard, valued, and given a role in this new mission. Eric, the once skeptical manager, had become the program's biggest supporter, especially when the Sunday morning family sessions for children with special needs became their highest revenue hours. Jimmy had become Uncle Cookie, inventing allergy-safe recipes and teaching the older kids how to cook, including Eli, who measured ingredients by touch and smell with impressive finesse. The Sunday program had exploded beyond expectations. One monthly gathering welcomed over 50 families from all across western North Carolina. The entire Blue Pine space was transformed into a celebration of inclusion, unity, and joy. But Maya's story didn't end there. She partnered with local schools to offer tutoring sessions, reading clubs, and therapeutic art workshops that were booked solid month after month. Still, for Maya, the most precious part remained in the quiet moments of each day, when she watched Tommy, a boy with autism, slowly open up through art. When Maria, a recent immigrant from Honduras, gained the confidence to read aloud in English. when children learned to accept one another with wide-open hearts. A small brass plaque mounted beside Booth 9 read, "For those who see with the heart," became the most meaningful symbol of what Blue Pine stood for. Maya was no longer just a waitress. She was a leader, a light, a living example of how steady kindness can transform an entire town. The new salary helped her afford better care for her father. The business share brought financial stability. But what truly changed her life was Eli. "This morning," Eli said one day while the other kids were busy coloring, "do you ever wonder what would have happened if you hadn't sat with me that day?" Maya paused, then smiled. "I think about that a lot, but I've come to believe kindness always finds a way. If it hadn't been me, it would have been someone else. Good people are out there. They just need the right moment to shine." Eli nodded. "Uncle Noah says you taught him that to run a good business, you have to be a good person first." Maya gently tousled his hair. "Your uncle's a wise man. But, Eli Franklin, you are the greatest teacher I've ever had." The afternoon sun streamed through the windows, bathing the children in golden light as they read and drew and dreamed. Maya watched quietly, a simple scene, but one powerful enough to shift the world. Once she thought she had just given a child a warm meal, but in truth that little boy had given her everything, a family, a purpose, and a reason to believe. And Booth 9, where it all began, remained reserved every Thursday from 2 to 4. Now it belonged to magic, stories, and all the adventures still to come, of a once ordinary waitress and the extraordinary boy who taught an entire town to see with their hearts. And if you haven't already, subscribe to Moments of Quiet Truth, where we believe that the human spirit is never truly defeated, only waiting to rise.